I'm Dream Queen. You're in the cab with me. Thank you so much for rolling. Good morning, Travis.
Good morning, Jada.
Thank you for swinging by.
Always a pleasure.
You make me blush. It's nice to reason with you and be brought back into a higher vibration.
Yeah. Well, it's not me. It's I and I.
I and I. Yeah. Talk to the people about I and I. We talked about it a little bit a while ago when we did the reggae show. You know, a lot of people don't understand what that vibe is.
Yeah, it's like if you backtrack it from consciousness, which is, there's many definitions of what consciousness is, but responsibility, and you start to realize that things are connected, everything is connected, the connectivity. I and I is a way of showing that level. In Jamaica, they call it word sound power, changing words up to mean something that they really should mean. And that was a way of a reminder that I'm speaking to I, and that's the reality that we live in. If I come with a good vibration, I'm bringing that as an observation first from what I see of everything around me, including who I'm talking to. And it's raising my vibration, then I'm mirroring it, and then the mirroring begins, which is a step towards empathy and compassion, I feel. It's almost that putting your feet into another person's shoes, that kind of higher vibration that everything seems to be fighting right now. And it seems that way because of technology, but I don't think that that's where we're at. I mean, there's a lot of bad things we keep in the closet around here, and they stay in the closet. There's a lot of good things that used to be in the closet that are out. So that's kind of how I see our posture in this bubble that we live in out here. And I and I is how I feel about this village. Like, I feel like I'm part of it, even though I'm a silent, off to the side kind of part of it. But when I feel the inner voice attacking me with all this, what I should have done, what people should have done, are we worthy of being on this planet, all of that kind of thing crushing in, I often think of the people around me. And when I think of these folks, it feels like a good crew. And then when I think deeper, I start to feel that we're everywhere. And that's why the heat is up right now. Yeah. And, you know, they'll show us exactly what we don't want to do in the future. That's their job.
Oh, boy. You know, with that, I tend to try to learn from the past, you know what I mean? So that we can figure out, like, what is our future right now and how far have we really come. And I saw this meme just yesterday, I think, and it was like, imagine storming Normandy 80 years ago and your grandkids vote fascism in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Can't imagine.
One would think that we would learn more from our past than now, you know, but I do feel like people have grown. We are further along than we were 80 years ago as far as, you know, making space for people and education as far as like compassionate beings, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or we just have more internet and more people to talk to, because then there's people who will say, oh, you know, discrimination was worse in certain demographics and families. And, you know, I'm thinking specifically about when people talk about being queer and black and our religious grandparents and things like, but there's always people in our culture weren't killing each other over that.
No.
80 years ago. We were loving our relatives. And speaking of the closet and things like that,
Yes.
you know what I mean? Like maybe you had a friend instead of a lover, you know what I mean? Things were referred to, but it wasn't, I don't know. I mean, are things as bad as they seem, I guess is the punchline question.
Right. Well, those divisions are crazy. They go all the way into the family dynamics of a house. If thinking about the way children used to be used as labor, and then as a parent trying to imagine sending my child off to those conditions, it doesn't even register. That's because of, like you said, we've come so far. And we've been through some things and felt that trauma. And I feel like even those we would say that are them and not us are actually I and I, whether you really understand that paradox or not. They need to touch the stove every once in a while. And not all of us need that. There's like a maturity that's different than like consciousness. It's about whether or not you still need to touch that stove or make those mistakes. But I feel like people do that and we make bigger progress often than we would have without it. It's like having the joker in the mix or the contrarian. There's characters around here that we see and are cordial with on a regular basis, but we keep them at a certain distance because we know it's only a matter of time. Something's going to slip out of their mouth. And the way that we avoid that is to not allow that amount of time. You touch base just a little bit. And that's like bridge building. It's like posturing of sorts because it allows you to hold your boundary and them to be themselves, so freedom is happening. And, but it takes an active, conscious effort to both keep the boundary and exist while someone else is maturing.
Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I liken that to the being, I feel like I'm in the class. We're all different levels, on the subject of compassion and coexistence, and then being pulled up to the desk by the teacher to the person who needs a study partner in this, and it's so exhausting. And then I feel like there are people who are like, they say that they're in for the project, and then they run off, they get the papers, and then they come back on the day that is due, and they're just like, just put my name on it. And it's like, no, I'm not going to just put your name on this. You didn't do any of the work, I don't know. And I wanted to talk a little bit more. We were outside talking about the posturing. When I feel like I'm looking at the news and these presidential decrees, or what we call them, executive orders and things like this that haven't been passed into law, but they're fear tactics, these words that are put out by the administration to invoke fear and submission in us, what they call, when you concede before you're actually forced to, you know what I mean? Like with our freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. And coming out with all the Antifa roundtable that came up, that they did on the 8th, say, where Pam Bondi or not Pam Bondi, but the Homeland Security lady got some people together, and Kash Patel and them sat around and talked about how they were going to prosecute Antifa. And to me, they look like a bunch of scared fascists.
Yes, it's fear.
But they looked scared, more scared than I felt. I'm like, you must be coming because you're scared that your brand of oligarchy and fascism is being opposed so hard that you got to come down on people who say that they are against fascism, because that's you. They were like, it was a scary looking kind of situation with some scary language. But then I have to remind myself, like, it also looked like a Comedy Central show. Like it looked like as if The Office or Parks and Rec had like an office meeting in a convention center with, and they all looked like they were in shock, eyes all wide and the propaganda coming out.
Right.
And I'm like, y'all are, if this wasn't if I didn't let it scare me, it would be hilarious. It's like as if South Park was real live actors. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
It was that bad. Some of us who consider ourselves president and top CEO of Antifa haven't even got a phone call yet.
Yeah, they said they were coming after the major funders. I'm like, okay. Wow. Where's my funding? Let me get some of that money before you take it away.
Just because we all have stock in ramen doesn't mean we're rich.
No, I swear. So can you say a little bit to the people about the bubbles? We were talking about the, being in our various bubbles, and you had like a Russian nesting doll analogy for the bubble. Bubbles on bubbles on
bubbles inside of bubbles.
Bubbles inside of bubbles.
But you can feel as if something big is happening, but you're part of something small. Like here we are in a village. We're seeing news that happens in a city with lots of people. And it can feel as if we're not part of that. But this posturing that happens in this village is happening everywhere. And what I mean by that is there's boundaries that don't get crossed. And there's only a few bridges around here. So, for instance, you can mess up at 2 different eating establishments and suddenly not have anywhere you can eat without driving 30 miles or 18 miles to Lone Butte or whatever until you burn that bridge. And then how far do you have to drive?
When you said that, it made me think about these ICE agents in Chicago where they're not being allowed to come in and eat or use the bathroom or, stuff like that. Like they're literally being shunned from certain establishments in Chicago.
And that's a natural part of the system of being free. You're free to shun, you're free to participate either way. And that's what they call cancel culture, but that's just another name put on, we're over you for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to have to be in timeout.
Yeah.
It's not cancel culture. It's common sense. We all need a break from you for a minute.
I swear to God, I was just thinking while you were talking, I'm like, I can't believe I forgot that lady's name. And I'm like, I'm so kind of glad I forgot her name for a minute. Christy Nome, because I just remember, because I'm like, y'all, I can't, for the whole week, you just can't exist for me. Like, I'm going to take a break from looking at your news for a couple of days and just give myself a little bubble where you don't exist. And then I forgot her name.
And that is the biggest cut to narcissistic activity you could possibly deliver. Their most important thing is that they're getting left out. It's a thing that comes up in their conversations that now everything's clicks and we're getting left out and cancel culture, and they're just trying to make life miserable for us. We're just trying to make life safe for everybody. And they don't necessarily like that. And all of these thoughts that go through their mind about the things that they hate, they don't come out in public because it's closeted. They understand that thing's already been shelved. You can't get violent with people in the street over some political stuff and expect the aggressor not to get attacked or stopped. Posturing. That posture is there. It holds a ground of sorts, that we don't see, an invisible barrier, but it's also a good thing. And it's a very base, primitive thing as well. Like we were saying, I've watched chickens for hours. I'm sure a lot of people around here watch chickens. It's pretty crazy, the dynamic between a rooster and the hens, or between roosters themselves, of constantly trying to keep that posture. And I feel like that's what I'm hearing a lot of times, like with they're just trying to steal our manhood and make everything trans and blah, blah, blah. I mean, these are some crazy, crazy things they're saying. Nothing has changed. They're just on this rhetoric that makes them feel good the same way like any addiction would make them feel good. And it's their safe space. And when you opened the program and said, don't be afraid to hope, that is a real thing. There are people who are afraid to hope. Like as soon as they start hoping, they feel vulnerable because through the trauma of their life and all of their family's past experiences in their mind, being at war is the safe space. When you're mad and you're fighting and you're working with that anger, you're feeling safe. But if you take them out of that safe space and they're vulnerable for a minute, there's something strange that happens in their chemistry that doesn't feel right. Alarms going off. And for us, it's not different. If we are baited into wanting to be the aggressor, there's that strange feeling you get where, well, once that starts happening, what happens?
I don't know what happens.
Well, your brain stops thinking a whole lot about what happens in those moments. That's survival mode. When you're in fight or flight.
Right. Hence warrior. So how do we, because I use that term, soldier of love, peaceful warrior, spiritual warrior, and there are people out that I know that take words like, I don't want to use the word fight anymore. Like, I'm not fighting against this. I'm building that. And I give you a hard time about the paradox all the time, but I do get it that both exist, that we have to, that both just exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find that a lot of those base properties, the primitive posturing, I find it to be awkward and cringy from the outside, and yet catch myself doing it all the time just because it's like a built-in thing from being a child and growing up as a male. And how were you going to use this body throughout the rest of your life? Is it going to be are you going to protect women? Are you going to protect children? Are you going to protect the boundaries that we have in the community? Are you going to be the one? And that kind of vibration is the same posturing, trying to be another rooster to keep the other roosters in check, trying to be just vague enough to keep everybody thinking, rent enough space in everybody's mind that they're hesitant to take radical action against the people that you love. And when I catch myself doing it, it doesn't feel, from a conscious perspective, like it's useful anymore, if that makes any sense. Like the posturing needs to be built on something other than a violent possible reaction from somebody.
Reactionary revolution, where we're just responding to a threat and what that evokes out of us. But you're almost in a position of disadvantage because you're responding to the attacker. I don't know.
Exactly. You're giving them the attention that they're looking for. The thing that you're going to do is exactly what they've been imagining you would do all the time. And the bait is set out through these conversations where I don't think half these people even believe what they're saying.
That's what I mean. Why they look like they're on a Comedy Central show. Like they're standing there at the end, all giving statements, and it all looked like they were being told. One guy was like, I am, doing this. We're gonna stop Antifa because I owe the United States government for saving me from, communism and my parents. And I'm like, it all looked scripted. And so then I'm like, what are you doing this for if you don't even believe in it? And that might be to our advantage. I think it is to our advantage. They don't even believe in it. Mm-hmm. Some of them. There's a handful of white supremacist oligarchs at the top who are fully invested in protecting what their financial empire, but I think a lot of them are just along for the ride and the money and to stay out of prosecution.
Yes.
When we were talking about bubbles, we were talking about Labyrinth.
Yeah.
And what song do you like? I like Chilly Down. When you were talking about Underground.
Underground.
I think that's a great one for right now, especially on this talk about Antifa and who we are as far as I don't care. I'll call myself a subversive. I will continue to fight against oppression in the people of the people for the name of capital for a few. And we dwell in the underground, you know. We were just talking off mic about Travis's relationship and philosophy around bubbles, and we're gonna go in on that. And how we brought up the Labyrinth movie was we were outside talking about the nesting bubbles, and I said that reminds me of the scene in Labyrinth where Bowie has the crystal ball, and he's always juggling that crystal ball thing, which is like so cool and smooth, right? And he's sends it out toward, you know, wherever she is in the matrix, in the ethos, in the dream, and somehow she winds up inside of the bubble crystal ball, and she's taken out of her quest and into a fantasy, his fantasy, which is layered over her fantasy, you know, as we know Sarah as a young woman who lives in a fairy tale world. And she loves her stories and her theater, and she dresses up in the princess outfits and things like this. And she gets transported into her personal fantasy bubble of being in a ballroom in a masquerade. And then it turns dark. And then she breaks out of the bubble. And that's how we got into wanting to bring in a song from Labyrinth. And so I want to talk with you and have you share with the people how you were just telling me that your kids used to worry about you blowing bubbles.
Yeah, it can seem odd.
I love it. I love how I it is just like the movie where I'll be sitting out on the patio at the restaurant down there and I see a bubble go by and I'm like, Travis, you know, wherever I'm at, I mean, it could be right here in front of the radio station and I see a bubble and I'm like, he's nearby, you know, and it's like a glitch in the matrix.
It is. In the Labyrinth situation, I mean, she's on a mission to save her brother.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's got to go up against some creepy white guy with a drug situation. Like, you know, we've all seen it out here, you know, yeah. The underground.
Oh my God, that's why I love that other tune. The which one with the Fireys, Magic Dance? You take off your head. She's like, I can't take off my head, it doesn't come off. They're like, come on. Play with us.
Yeah, art imitates life.
Yeah.
And that was a powerful movie. For me, as a kid, Jim Henson, you know, the magic of those puppets and all that stuff before cartoons and CGI and all that stuff, it was pretty nice.
Yeah.
I love the music.
Yes. Yeah. You remind me of the Babe.
What Babe?
Babe of the Power. Power of voodoo.
See, we all have that.
Yeah. So your magic of the bubbles, and how did you put your kids' minds at ease when they're like, Dad, you're out here blowing bubbles, you look like a weirdo?
You know, they've watched me use a lot of different types of therapies in my life. Well, and it can come off as anything. I think people use their art as therapy, of course, without calling it that. The same way that herb would be called by medicine by those who are seeking medicine, but then those who aren't don't even realize that medicine is what they're getting, regardless of how they, you know, call it. You can say it's recreation or whatever, which is another weird word. Recreating what?
Right. Right. Now say the phrase again about how we are working with language. When you had a term for it in Jamaica, the INI,
is the word sound power.
Word sound power. And we look at every single word that we use and choose them carefully. Recreation is recreation. You're recreating your reality.
Right. And what reality is that?
We get to decide as we're doing it, no?
Mm-hmm.
That was something else that you said during the song about we were talking about what is forever. It's only forever. And I'm like, hey, man, you know, like, I've been thinking about that. Like, how long is forever if eternity is eternity and change is constant? Is there such a thing as forever?
Yeah, it's the timestamp thing. It's like for some people, the first hour of their job is forever, and then the second hour is another forever.
And the weekend
and you can't have two forevers, you know, that doesn't make any sense.
Gotta get me out of here.
Mm-hmm.
So, art therapy and recreation, you know, I've been doing my collages. I don't know if I had talked about it on the show before, but I was going through something and trying to support some loved ones, and I didn't know what to do with myself. And all of a sudden I began collaging bookmarks with the tiniest, you know, bookmarks are very small. You got one yourself there from me. Mm-hmm. And the words, I would cut out words and use them to make what I realized was reminding me of refrigerator magnet poetry. And a long, long time ago, forever ago, I was like, man, I want to make a poetry book that's just poems that I make from refrigerator magnets. Like, you just have this set group of words that you get to work with, and you come up with something clever with that and meaningful. It has to be meaningful and clever. And so my bookmarks became prayers from these words that I find, you know, and I realize as I'm getting really into the minutia, because cutting out things for a bookmark are really small and hunched over and in it with, and I'm like, I've never been so intentional about anything in my life than trying to cut out a word that's in size 4 font and then trying to glue it onto a piece of cardboard.
But also you chose the words for my bookmark very specifically, and that's another level of intention.
Yeah.
And that is what art is, intention.
Right.
Made physical.
Yeah.
You know.
So then I said, well, these are I just began to feel like what I've seen, like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or something like that. Like, I'm in the asylum in the rec room, you know, and this is my art therapy moment to you know, keep me from screaming in the hallways, is I'm sitting in this room getting very intentional about my arts and crafts to stay out of trouble. And so when we get into, you know, rec room is the recreation room, the recreation mode. And so your bubbles, when you're blowing them, I was asking you if you use a machine or your breath. And I asked you that because in the world of the power of the voodoo is using one's breath is very important, because it holds your DNA. It holds what they call ashe. You know, your very essence is breath. So can you say about the different ways in which you spread your joy, your screams, your glitches between breath and machine?
Well, it's like playing a flute almost. You have to get the vibration right on the metal of a flute with your breath to make any kind of a sound. Bubbles are kind of particular. If the fluid has lost its little bit of moisture content, the viscosity goes up, the breath changes if you want to make anything happen with it. The humidity outside changes it. The barometric pressure changes it. They get stuck to ghosts. I mean, there's all kinds of like fun things that happen, but when you're breathing into a bubble mix, you have to come at that wand as if you're going to get a forever blowing situation. So with full breath, if you come at it with a half breath, it's almost like you don't trust it. And so you're not going to give it that much of an air. You're just doing it to blow a bubble or whatever. And then it doesn't happen, or you only get one. Whereas you can take a deep breath thinking about how to approach it. Sometimes if the wand's right on the edge, the stuff that's stuck to its stem is running past it in a way where you can blow for almost 20 seconds and get thousands. And there's something almost video game like trying to find the rhythm of the liquid and understand the air that's around you. You can't see air unless you have bubbles or enough sage. You can't see it. And it's real shocking to see what it's doing. It's not doing what you think it's doing. In your mind, you think that, you have some concept of the breeze when it comes by. You don't. You're in a tunnel often, and the tunnel will change directions. In this town, the wind blows in one direction and starts to move clockwise pretty often, like more often than not. And it will eventually make its way back around, but it'll have south by southwest is where our wind normally comes from. So if I blow bubbles here at the radio station, they're going to pass by my house, more than likely, and go up that hill and over the gold mine. And watching that wind pattern from different parts of town, which way it's going, and it's really a break from what my inner voice is telling me all the time, which is, are you busy being worthy of the day? Are you doing enough for, your existence? Or, the inner voice, it's like cranking on you all day long. It's trying to keep you in that mode of questioning things. And when you're questioning things, that's like not taking that full breath and approaching that wand as if you can blow it for 30 seconds. Because what if you have half a breath and you start blowing and you run out of breath, but you could see that you could keep going, and that to me is what do you call it? A parallel between life and what happens in a small moment of blowing bubbles. I need to approach it with a full breath and full confidence that what I'm about to do is going to work out, even if it doesn't, even though often things don't. You still have to approach it with that level of, I've got myself together. What I'm in control of is my breath. And I don't know if that made any sense at all. But
it's very magical. No, it made a lot of sense. And it's really magical because I think for me, I heard you cover intentionality, being centered in one's self, and how what our worth is. You're casting spells, if you ask me. I mean, to just
that's what I see everyone else doing.
we're all doing it, and that's the thing that people don't. A lot of people don't realize. I think many people do realize it, especially as we move more into the future and freedom of religion, real true freedom of religion, as opposed to the colonized religion. Because the reason that they want to take away everybody's understanding of the occult and mysticism is to disempower us. I talk a lot about story creation, and we have the power to create our realities. We really do. We don't we're not in control of all the circumstances around us, but that's because it's a co-creation. So you have a group of people that are trying to stomp out co-creators. I mean, I'm a co-creator with Christy Nome. Our creations may be at odds, or our intentions may be at odds, but I'm co-creating this reality. And so that's where you have, can we talk about the surface tension of the bubble?
Yes.
You know,
Christy Nome, thank you for the inspiration.
You know what I mean? I mean, really, the intentionality of the whole thing is I intend and you intend to make the world a safer place for all of us. Some people only want it to be safe for their profit margin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we have to, it's not gonna stop until is it ever gonna stop?
No, that place seems like a rough place from our perspective to be in. And somehow our space seems like a rough space for them to be in. Because in their eyes, everything is built on them. That's how narcissism works. That's how business works. They're connected in strange ways that are hard to explain in a couple minutes, but the profit margin and, what the word margin is. Like a lot of businesses make their profit on a very narrow margin. How much they're going to make on the butter they bought or whatever they're going to, it's a very little sliver. And so they just need to grow it and grow it and grow it when it runs on some theory of scarcity, which we've talked about before, but it's really a fear-based situation. I think people don't realize that the resources that we're dealing with, in the way that we approach resources nowadays has been rough on the land. There's no question about it. But just as our trauma has molded us into who we are also molding nature into what's to come. And it's not an us and them thing. It's I and I. Once you realize that your enemies are actually unwittingly working for us, then that paradox kind of comes into play. And when they're really messing up, we shouldn't get in their way, but protect people, absolutely. There is nothing wrong with getting in the middle of someone pushing someone around, specifically male to female violence, violence against children. Those have always been core trigger points, and they should be. And so I'm not saying that there's not a place for a violent reaction, but it has to be real pointed. It's like catching a dog in the middle of the act in order to make the dog understand what you need. Stop pooping in the house, whatever it is. And that's what we're asking them to do, is to just stop pooping in the house.
Yeah, now you can't come in and use the bathroom,
That's
Christy,
right.
You have to poop somewhere else and then see how it feels. You have to poop outside. Oh, I guess, can we, I don't know. I think it's okay that we said that on the radio.
I might have wandered into the weeds, but.
No, it's the weeds. It's okay. We're out of time, so we can wander out together after the show. Listen, everybody, thanks for tuning in and listening to Travis and I, Babylon in Babylon. We're here for each other. And I don't know. What else? What other words do you have for the people while I get this closing song? We're going to make room for Heidi now.
Yeah, all you haters out there, I know better. You're like actually soft at heart. You're going to smile at me when I walk by. You're going to feel vulnerable for a second. It's going to hurt, but you'll get over it and you'll learn to love it.
We have to learn to love each other. And real quick, something that you said that it made me think of Aikido, the martial art. That using the enemy's force against them or the aggressor's force against them through
Redirection.
You know. I want to give some love to the frog people in Portland and all the sacred clowns out here. The people using the energy to just keep the spirits up and show how really absurd this whole thing is, even though it's horrifying. Thanks for joining, Travis.
Thanks for having me.
In the Cab Radio is produced by Jada White, aka Dream Queen. Original theme music produced by Baby Weekend Boys and Icky Mac the Beat Jugular. Learn more at In the Cab Radio at Linktree. Thank you so much for tuning in.